So when I got so burned out in the beginning phases of my business, marriage was terrible. My health was terrible. I was overweight. I was drinking all the time, just really unhealthy, all the way around. Like I was getting by, but what I was doing wasn't benefiting me.
How did you figure it out? Like, how did you get to this space where you're like, I don't have all the answers, but we can do this and we can do this and we can do this?
Really went on a mission to say I don't like this. I don't like who I am. I don't like how I feel.
Yeah.
And really wanted to change that. And as I started researching and making changes in my own life, and getting healthy mentally and physically.
Right.
All of these modalities of infrared saunas and cold plunging and IV therapy and the conversations around that wellness industry was serving me in a really great way. And it kind of was one of those, this is good for other people. So how about I bring this to people who don't know that it exists, and another business gets born.
Welcome into Behind the Spotlight podcast, where your story matters. I'm Danielle J. Martin, your host, and I'm on a mission to empower and educate you towards your greatness. On this podcast, you'll learn ways to turn your thoughts into action. Plus, you'll also learn from individuals who will share personal experiences and actionable steps on how to create the life you desire. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome everyone back into Behind the Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, and welcome into this Women's History Month special edition. Now on this series, I'm going to be introducing to you some powerhouse women who are doing some pretty big things. Now you may be familiar with some of them, but I thought it would be a great opportunity to invite you into our intimate conversations that we typically have on a weekly basis. Now these powerhouse women are trailblazers. They're paving the way in their business and in their community. So I thought it would be a great opportunity for us to celebrate these trailblazers. So let's tee up for some inspiration and some powerful conversations this month. So our first person that we have coming up is Tracy Jepson. She's a powerhouse woman with 20 years of expertise in small business consulting, coaching, and advisory. Now, she's not just about the numbers. She's also about adding joy throughout her entrepreneurial journey and redefining success. You'll also hear her talk about how she loves this idea of collecting businesses. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, you're about to find out. So let me introduce you to Tracy Jepson. Welcome to the show, Tracy. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you, Danielle, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited. So in case you guys don't know, Tracy Jepson, she is known for collecting businesses. So I'm super excited for today's episode because one, I came across you. Let me think about this. How did we meet? Mutual friends, just seeing you in the community. I saw you speak one time at the Greater Speaker Partnership, and I fell in love with your presentation. And so your name came back up around the time I was in the process of, building this business. And so I said, I have to talk to this woman. Like there's something about you that is just sticking with me and I have to speak to you. Set up a lunch. We talked for hours. And I was like, oh my God, okay, you're exactly how I thought you were. Have you ever had that with someone? You're like, okay, I think this person is like this. And then they're actually like that. I wasn't disappointed,
yes, And I thought the same thing about you. I was like, I see this super energetic, woman in social doing all of this media and these big things. And I'm like, she just reminds me of myself when I was younger. And you can just see the aspiration in you. Yeah. And I was so shocked to get your message asking me to lunch and that we, to meet, because we have tons of mutual friends, but we'd never crossed paths, which I thought was really interesting because it feels so small sometimes.
Yeah.
And I could have sat there for hours longer on our little snow day lunch.
It was snowing. It was
freezing.
Yes, it was coming down. Now that I think about it, we were at Spin Pizza and we're like, okay, what is happening? It's like a whole snowstorm out here.
Yes. Everything was closed that day and we were both working and sat there
and we
for
made
hours.
It work.
It was great. It was the best.
What I love about you, honestly, is that you're a powerhouse woman. I'm so thankful that we have met and we've talked and we have just built this rapport and relationship that I think is becoming a friendship to me.
Absolutely.
And just within our short period of time, Tracy, I've learned so much from you about business. And so I feel like you are the perfect person to kick us off in this new series, but also I'm excited for the world to get to know Tracy, not just about the finances, but you have so many other businesses that I want to get into. And also I want to dive into just your perspective on how you have just like built this lifestyle of happiness, of peace, work-life balance is what you talk about. And so I would love to dive into that. But first, let me start with what led you into entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So my husband and I at the time, the start of my career was we were going through Dave Ramsey's program. We were getting out of debt. And, if you're familiar with Dave at all, he's talking about, get a side gig, figure it out, find money, whatever. So I was working full-time for a nonprofit here in town and thought, well, let me put an ad on Craigslist and see if I can take on any bookkeeping clients because I was doing financial management for the nonprofit. It was my wheelhouse. Put out an ad. 24 hours later, I had 3 clients and started doing bookkeeping for these small businesses just as my side hustle. And it exploded and was able to leave my full-time job within about 6 months, took them on as a client and grew the bookkeeping business that has now turned into an advisory practice. It just really led to kind of a life of its own, but we were able to get out of debt because of that. And it was that thing that I never knew that I wanted to do. But it's been the best, like not working for corporate anymore, not working for anyone else, just working for my clients. Like it's been incredible. And then to build a team on top of it, it was just the start.
I love that. So you don't just do financial bookkeeping, but you have all of these other businesses. Take me down that route. What led you into the diving business?
Yeah. So we were going to go on a vacation with some friends and a couple of them were going to do some scuba diving when we were in Cozumel. And I thought, oh, scuba diving sounds fun. I told my husband we should try that.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, let me think about it. He's not much of a water guy. And I was like, well, you think about it. I'm going to go ahead and sign up and get lessons. Signed up the next day, started my certification process. And the very first time I was underwater was the first time my brain has ever been quiet. It was silence and all you can hear is breathing. And I pop up out of the water, which not something you should be doing in scuba diving. But I did. My instructor said, is everything okay? And I said, that's the greatest feeling I've ever had in my entire life. I've never had my brain be quiet, or be still. Like it's always running 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And underwater, it is so peaceful. And I decided at that moment that I needed to scuba dive the rest of my life. And so did everyone else. And called one of my friends who we were going on the trip with. And I said, if you ever thought about opening a dive shop? And he was like, well, yeah, when I'm retired, like in Mexico. And I'm like, no, in Topeka during the pandemic. And he's like, sure. And a couple of days later, we were, incorporated and had signed a lease on a space, which is the one that we're in now. And knew that I wanted to grow a swim school and a dive school here in Topeka.
Wow.
So it was it was out of nowhere.
I've never ran into anybody or known anybody that's had a dive shop. So when you told me about it the first time, I was like, wow, female business owner that owns a dive shop. That's badass.
And it's pretty rare in the United States. So the scuba industry in general is a heavily male dominated I like to call it old white guy land that sometimes doesn't have a great reputation for customer service. It doesn't have a great reputation for bringing women into the sport. And immediately when I started diving and we had the shop open, I started going on trips by myself, but it was with women dive groups and just started figuring out how important it is to have a female owner in this industry and how much of a difference it has made. We get so many women that come into the shop that maybe have felt uncomfortable going somewhere else or we're talking about equipment and we're talking about, hips and all the things that women have that men don't. And those conversations with men can be uncomfortable. And so I think that the women feel really at ease. And then when, partners or spouses come in, they're glad that their partner feels at ease because again, they have a woman to talk to and not just this sort of kind of again, male-dominated industry that has not ever really been friendly to women.
Wow, that's so good. And it's interesting because it's like every time I talk to you, I always just feel like your presence and your just demeanor is so strong and bold. And I just feel like, how did you have that? Have you always had that in business? Like this confidence?
I have. So, and I don't know necessarily where that comes from. I think, if we're just talking about like a disc or something, I'm a very high D, high I. But I've always just believed that I can figure it out. Like I may not know how to do it, but I can figure it out. I'm extremely resourceful. I know a lot of people, and I figure if I can't do it, I know somebody that can, or I'm going to find somebody that can help.
Yeah.
I think just always being willing to ask for help has led me to be confident in business, and the understanding that nobody knows what they're doing.
Right.
Like not everybody has it figured out. Like you can look like you've got it figured out, but everyone needs help.
Yes.
And the ability to ask questions, I think brings confidence to me in that.
That's so good. And I like that you talked about like just the idea of like, especially the beginning of starting a business, like you really have no idea what you're doing. But yet like when we had our conversation during lunch, you were telling me about all of these different businesses. And I love that you were like, yeah, I collect businesses. And I'm like, that just sounds like so mind blowing. Like it makes me like you're collecting all these paychecks, right? And so it's interesting how like it's very rare to come across many women that have multiple businesses on this type of level. Tell me, how did you figure it out? Like, how did you get to this space where you're like, I don't have all the answers, but we can do this and we can do this and we can do this?
Again, people. A team. I couldn't do anything that I'm doing without a team. And that means a team in business. That means a team at home. My husband's a team. The people that clean our house are a team. There are things that I'm willing to outsource in my life to be able to gain time or energy for something else. I think it was one of my mentors very first told me when I started the bookkeeping business was make your next client your house cleaning client. Make your next client the XYZ, whatever it is that you want.
Yeah.
And it was like start outsourcing the things in your life that take away from the ability to make money or to do business or that you don't enjoy.
Right.
So I was working 80 hours a week plus when we were still going through getting out of debt. And I wasn't spending time with my family. I wasn't spending time with my husband. I'm very open that, our marriage was crashing and was terrible during that time because of the high stress and I didn't have balance in my life and I didn't have boundaries with clients or anything else. I would be working late hours and all kinds of things. So learning to have put in a team much sooner than I did and making those mistakes, like that is really how I'm able to do more is by having more people around me and trusting them to get a job done or, getting rid of the things off of my plate that are just not my gifts. Like I just can't do everything. And knowing that I don't have to do it and that I shouldn't do it has made it so much easier.
And I know we didn't really touch on this, but going back to that season when you said you were in debt, what led you and your husband to say, you know what, we need to go take this course to figure out how to get out of this? No one is thinking we're in debt. We have no money, but still you're willing to say, hey, I think this is the course that we need to take.
Yeah. This story is always funny in my mind now, but I remember taking the day off of work and I was sitting in my master closet or whatever and then cleaned the bathroom, the closet and I'm the one that always took care of our money and paid bills and that kind of thing. And we always, we had a credit card for points and we'd always pay it off every month. And that month we couldn't pay it off. It wasn't going to go to zero and we were going to carry a balance. And I freaked out. I started crying hysterically and I started Googling, how do you get out of debt? And I was looking at our bank account. I'm like, we make really good money. We both had great jobs and I didn't understand why we didn't have anything.
Wow.
And my husband and we never really talked about money together. There was never really any, quote, money problems.
Right.
It was just all of a sudden there was nothing left. And so I started Googling and found Dave Ramsey and started listening to his episodes like all day, like when it was really on podcast, and was listening over and over. And when my husband came home, I said, okay, here's the deal. We're in debt. We're getting out. And this is what we're going to do. And we're going to go to this class. Yeah. And I just laid it out, and he was like, all right, I'm in. And he didn't say a thing about it. He was like, I'm with you. Like, let's do it.
That's powerful. And it's like, it's good to know that you can have a supporting partner during that time, because typically when you're like in that situation, it's hard to have someone that's like, come on, honey, like we don't have any money to pay, but instead you guys are like, we can figure this out. It's so interesting that like that demeanor and mindset has carried over to just where you are now, collecting all of these businesses. And so getting to this third business that's in the health lifestyle, I'm super excited.
And it does seem, I've got the advisory practice, we have the dive shop, and now this wellness studio that's going in. And people say, oh, those are all so different.
Right. I even asked you that. Yeah. I'm like, how do these all align?
And I think that they are all perfectly matched. So, my entrepreneurial like spirit, I get to help advise other business owners and help them throughout the day. And where I find my work-life balance is I love to travel, and I love the water, and I love our conversation earlier. I actually wish we could have shared that with people, like just that passion for water in my life.
Yes.
I get that piece from diving, and I get to share that with other people. So while I get that, that passion fulfilled, I get to share it. And I also get to fulfill a mission where I want to serve as many kids in in Shawnee County to get swim lessons. And we've just launched the swim school as part of the dive shop. It was always part of it. But so it's that giving back portion feels really good. And then kind of, again, that wellness path that I went on. So when I got so burned out in the beginning phases of my business, marriage was terrible. My health was terrible. I was overweight. I was drinking all the time, like just really unhealthy, like all the way around. Like I was getting by, but what I was doing wasn't benefiting me. And really went on a mission to say, like, I don't like this. Like, I don't like who I am. I don't like how I feel. Yeah. And really wanted to change that. And as I started researching and making changes in my own life, and getting healthy mentally and physically.
Right.
All of these modalities of infrared saunas and cold plunging and IV therapy and the conversations around that wellness industry was serving me in a really great way. And it kind of was one of those, this is good for other people. So how about I bring this to people who don't know that it exists, and another business gets born. So Lux Wellness Studio really is the culmination of me finding that balance in my life and finding the ability to have work-life balance and what my day looks like and just how I want to feel and how I treat myself. And instead of buying one of those saunas and putting it in my house, now I own several of them that everyone else gets to use too. But it really is. To me, it's just it's that one more thing of I know this is good and I want to share it.
That's so good.
And so being able to create something that other people can enjoy, like that's what brings me happiness.
I love that. I love how you have taken your passion for something that you love, but also giving back and serving others. And I think I even talk about that too, like just even as I'm teaching people just like how to do podcasting. Like I was telling my friend, I was telling you earlier too, that I'm like, it has nothing to do with like starting a podcast. It has everything to do with using your voice is what I strive for people to do. And so what I love is that like you've taken all of your passions, put them into all businesses. Now I know many people are asking or wondering this main question, how are you doing all of this?
Yeah. And I just go back to that team. Like I don't do this on my own. So I have an incredible business partner in the dive shop, and he is also one of our partners in the wellness studio. He has a very similar drive that I do. And so we're a really good fit when it comes to that. Like we balance each other out in a way that, is very different than like people say, like work marriages and things like that.
Right.
I feel it's more like he can answer questions that I can't, or we're willing to bounce ideas off. So he's a great partner in all of that, which is a big help. But like my staff in all of those businesses, they are incredible in their roles, and our clients love them. And it's just, I can't do everything.
Yeah.
And again, having finally really gotten through many years of being in business, so it's been over 10 years now, finally also figuring out how to get that marriage part of it to be balanced also, because where I have this super high energy drive to always be doing and creating, that's not the same that my husband has. And his ability to be content is something that I don't have.
Yeah.
And so that is something that I need in my life to remind me, like, oh yes, slow down. And again, that goes into the health and wellness, and to just really have shifted my mindset around things. Like I don't need to do everything. The question people ask all the time is, like, when do you sleep? I'm like 9 o'clock almost every night. Like, and I sleep really, really well because I'm not trying to be the one that does everything. I'm willing to invest in staff and team and empowering them to make decisions and mistakes. They're not going to be perfect either. And I've always said that there's just nothing that somebody can do to crash one of these businesses overnight. Like you can't make that big of a mistake that we can't fix together.
Yeah, that's so good. And I guess even too, I was just thinking like, so I always like to not only empower people on this podcast, but educate them, right? And so I'm curious even too, from like a business standpoint, it's like, how did you navigate hiring people for all of these different positions? Now you could say like, well, I have a network now, but how did you get to the space of knowing where to go, knowing who to hire, knowing how to manage these 3 different things? How did you get there?
Yeah. And they're all different. Like the staff at each of those locations, they're all different types of people. And it's interesting that you said that you're my network. So when I started the bookkeeping business, I wanted to connect with other bookkeepers and other business advisors and kind of understand how they're running their business. Like you and I share, getting into networking groups where no one is gatekeeping information and that everyone is sharing that has been life-changing. So some of the groups that I am part of, there's so much business to go around. Like I'm not in competition with other people who are doing small business advisory or bookkeeping or whatever. Like there is way enough business to go around for everyone. And so there's just not that mindset of, oh, I'm not going to share my secrets. Everyone says like, hey, this works great. Or maybe this doesn't work for me, but it works for you. Like that sharing of information. And in one of those groups, one of the gals actually said, hey, I have an assistant that I can't afford to pay. She's volunteering for me. I think she would be great for you. She's been with me for almost 6 years now because she made the intro and said, your business is growing bigger and faster than mine is. And if you can pay this person, she's a rock star and I'm going to gift her to you. And she absolutely did. And
that's beautiful.
Like I love her dearly. And I actually just hired her mom, but about 6 months ago, because she wanted to come work for me too, because her daughter loves to work for me, but just the situation, like it worked out really well. And they're remote in Colorado, but like I lucked out kind of on that one. I've made some really bad hires. I tried to kind of do the right things. I would give people, Colby tests or different personality tests just to kind of like understand how they are. But there's definitely been people that, seemed like a better fit. My very first assistant, I really like her as a person. She was a terrible assistant. She didn't follow up on anything. Now
you can talk about her.
She was disorganized, that kind of thing. Like, great human. But also I probably would have done things very differently now than I did 10 years ago. Like at that point I was overwhelmed. I hired way too late and, just all of those things. But starting with your network, asking, who
That's
other
good.
people know who, might be a good fit to work for you. Allowing the people around you to be very honest with you. Like, am I difficult to work for? Or am I, are my expectations really high? And just being really authentic with yourself and understanding how you need to work.
That's good.
I do have very high expectations. I probably, want to know more or ask more out of people than maybe somebody else does. But I know that about myself. And so that interview process, like being very clear, like, hey, if this business is new or we don't have this role defined, you're going to have to help define it if that's something you're comfortable with. But like just being like, I don't have all the answers.
Right.
And maybe you do and maybe you don't, but we're going to figure it out together.
That's so good.
Like our studio manager that we just hired for the mall, like she's come on with us now and it's probably a month and a half before we get to open.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, I don't know what this is going to look like before we open for the next month and a half, but I knew that you were who I wanted. And so I brought you on now so I didn't lose you, but we're going to have a really interesting time and we're just going to figure it out together. Like we're going to answer questions and the right people will be the right fit for you. But just being honest with who you are and what you need out of someone is going to make a hire go so much further.
That's so empowering to hear and inspiring too, because I know like in the beginning stages of starting a business, it's like trying to navigate hiring and trying to find the right person. It's so hard to, like you said, be honest and say, hey, one, I've never done this before. This is a new journey for both of us. And so I just need you to know that like, hey, we're going to be in this together. It's going to be a little rocky, but we're going to get through it. But I hope you know that like you are the first person that's going to be on this road with me. So I hope you're willing to be that person. But I think it's inspiring to know that like there are people out there that's willing to ride with you and that's willing to do it.
I think sometimes that's exciting for some people because otherwise they've now the flip side is they could get into a really cookie cutter role where it's like, well, this is what the last person did. And so you expect that they're going to also fill those shoes the same way. Or, they don't know what they need to live up to, where otherwise it's like, hey, this is the wild, wild west and we're just going to go at this together. Let's sort it out. I know, like I said, for our new studio manager, she was excited about that kind of thing because it kind of gives them ownership without having to own the company.
That's good. Are you ready to transform your mindset and turn your dreams into reality? Join the Insider Community Circle today and take your personal growth to the next level. Get exclusive access to my personal framework that will guide you on the path to success. Don't just dream it, take action. Be the first to know about our upcoming Behind the Spotlight podcast releases, hear about my real-life experiences, and you'll gain insider information on the highly anticipated Rise and Thrive conference. So elevate your mindset and become a part of our thriving community today. Sign up by going to www.daniellejmartin.com. That's www.daniellejmartin.com. Your journey to a new mindset starts here. So I think you're the right person to talk to about this because you and my other friend, Dell, are literally grooming me to get more comfortable with just the idea of charging more. Okay. And I think a lot of people struggle with this. I'm super excited to talk about it because there is this thing of like a poverty mindset. And I think that when you are stepping into business, if you've never done it before, maybe you're like, okay, I'm going to just start charging at $100, right? You're like, this is a lot. And then some people like you might say, that's too much. You need to start at 1,000. And it gets uncomfortable because it's like, one, I really figured out that it's like, maybe you don't know your value or your worth yet. But I love that every time I talk to you, you motivate me and you inspire me to say that like, you need to understand your value. And not to be afraid that like you should be charging X amount and this is why, right? But getting more comfortable with like the language of saying like, this is why you should be charging this much. It's not about the price. It's about like what your value is. And so kind of talk to the viewers about this, about just like getting to the space of understanding your value through pricing.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to know that like money trauma is a thing. So the way generally we view money or the clients that I have worked with view money is often how they viewed it when they grew up. So if you thought your parents had money, or if you thought you didn't, if you always heard, maybe mom was always saying like, oh, we're not going to McDonald's because it's too expensive, or, oh, we're not doing this because it's too expensive, or, oh, you guys cost too much, or this thing or whatever. So you're constantly hearing growing up, too expensive, too expensive, too expensive.
Yeah.
And then on the other flip coin, like I grew up in a household where I was probably very spoiled.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back now, I kind of have a better understanding of where my parents were financially, but like I didn't hear the word no.
Yeah.
And it's not because I could just get everything or because they could afford everything like the way my parents saved. I didn't see any of that growing up, but there was, they had methodology that like I just didn't see, but I never heard no.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, I got to college and I didn't tell myself no either. And I got into massive credit card debt. Like, because, if I had grew up not hearing no, I was like, well, I don't know how we're paying for this, but this little plastic card does a lot of this. So I tell the story to get into when we hear about pricing, and it's a lot of times women, but it's a ton of men too that I talk to that don't charge enough, don't know how to charge. And it is because of what we grew up doing or what we heard.
Yes.
So there's a foundation that we're all experiencing in different ways about pricing. So the way to price a service is to back into it, like knowing what you need to live on. Like if you don't know what your household like budget is or how much your rent is and what utilities cost and whatever you need to be taking home, if you don't know that number, pricing doesn't even matter. Like we have to get to that first.
Yeah.
So find out what we need to live. And then how many clients does it take to cover that living? If I'm selling $25 widgets, how many is that? Is it one consulting client? There's variations. But most people go at pricing with, oh, well, this person charges $200, so that's what I'm going to charge.
Right.
We don't know why that person's charging $200, and probably that person doesn't either.
Right.
So was it mathematical? Was it planned? Or is it just this number in the air? When we see people charging, again, a random number that's too low and that we all would agree on is too low.
Yeah.
They may have money traumas that say making money, like they're not worthy of making money. They're not allowed to make money. Maybe as a child, they didn't have any. And so now they're bringing money into their lives and it feels bad. People even, sometimes have a hard time accepting job offers at that price because it feels bad, like they don't deserve it. There's also this mentality when we go into business. And again, I really see this one maybe more in women, of people asking me, Tracy, I'd like to start a nonprofit. I say, great. Why do you want to start a nonprofit? And they say, because I want to give back to the community or I want to do good things.
Yeah.
I want people to be very clear and understanding that you can do good things and give back to the community and make money. Nonprofit is a tax status.
Oh my gosh.
It has nothing to do with the goodness of your heart. The NFL is the largest nonprofit in America. Do they do good things? I don't know. That's probably debatable.
Yeah.
But just because you want to go do good does not mean you can't make money. And if you are a nonprofit who doesn't make money, you are out of business.
Yeah. That's so good.
So when we're talking, pricing, there's a lot that goes into the back end of pricing and how to come up with the exact price that you need. But just saying, I'm going to charge $200 because this gal or this guy charges $200, like we're not just throwing numbers at a wall here. Like there has to be a mathematical reason for that. And you can make a lot of money and do a lot of good. And in fact, the most people who do the most good have a lot of money to do it with. And no one's saying that person shouldn't be making millions if they're giving back to their community. Like no one's going around thinking that somebody who's wealthy and giving and doing good is making too much.
Right. That's so good. Okay. You said so much. I'm trying to
go on. I was like, I know I can go on for days about pricing and money. And
no, I love this.
But it all really does start with mindset.
Yeah. I do love though, how you gave us some like action steps here. And so I hope that everyone here heard that you said, start with what your living budget is, right? Kind of like start with the end in mind. How much do you need to make a living? And then go from there. Because I think like you mentioned, a lot of people see other people charging services and they're like, well, I want to be like that person. So I'm just going to start throwing out this number. And then you're not getting any feedback. And it's like, well, are you that valuable or worthy to that person, that same level? And so I guess like what other advice do you have for people to, after they figure out their living situation, how do we know when it's time to increase the price after that?
Yeah. When you get too busy. So I did not raise my prices soon enough and I got totally swamped with clients when I started out. So it was really exciting. It's like all these people wanted to work with me. And I thought, oh, great, I'm going to make all this money and, have all this stuff. I got buried in work. Like my services were terrible. Like I just things collapsed.
Yeah.
Because I had so many clients that I couldn't service them. And it was because I wasn't charging enough. So had I raised my prices, had less clients, could put more time and quality work into that.
Right.
That's when prices need to go up. When you're in demand, when you have wait lists, when you cannot service the number of people that you have at that price, it's time to start increasing.
You mentioned earlier too that in order to see money as well, you have to invest it. What if someone is like, I don't have any money to invest in? Do you think that statement is true? Or do you think that someone can invest, let's say into $100 program and get something out of it? Maybe it's building up the skills, building up the resources to know how to now offer service. So what do you say to people that may feel like, I don't have anything to invest in?
Yeah. So I think investing in myself and, continuing education, additional skills, anything that is going to make me better, I am totally willing to do. And I wasn't at the beginning because, again, it was money going out the door that I didn't think that I had. So it was like, how many more clients do I need to bring on in order to join a coaching program? Or how many more things do I need to be doing or selling in order to join the thing?
Yeah.
And save up and do it. I know that when I invest in programs and in myself, I go through them and I actually do the work. The other thing, we could talk about programs for a long time, but I do the work and I make more money because of it. If I invested in a speaking course and I'm getting speaking opportunities that are paid,
right,
that money came back tenfold to me. Or, if I'm investing into a program where I'm learning to provide better customer service or something in my trade that is important, I can charge more because now I have more experience and I have greater knowledge to share. You're going to get that back as long as you are actually doing the work to learn the skill that course is going to help you with. And again, anytime that people are investing into courses, coaching, group programs, that kind of thing, find out about the person doing it, make sure that they have the credentials to be selling it, ask for referrals or prior clients that have been part of it. Anyone online can say that they're a coach these days. And it's a scary, scary world of what people are investing in that they're not getting anything back from. Or they think that by joining the program, it's the easy button. All of a sudden now this is going to get better. But they forget that there's work that has to get done. And sometimes those courses can be really time consuming, making sure that they are actually the time to invest in it. Because their dollars are important. But if they're just not going to pay any attention, then no, you'll never get an ROI.
That's so good. Yes, I agree with you. Nowadays, you don't know who you're coming across. Everyone, like you said, everyone's calling themselves a coach nowadays. And it's kind of confusing a little bit. I think it kind of draws a gap for the experts that have been doing this for years, been in, let's say, school, getting, certifications and licenses. And then you have people that's just coming on social media saying, hey, I'm a coach. Sign up for my course today. And you're like, what?
Yeah. So nobody's asking the right questions of just making sure that who they're investing in is a legitimate resource, that they do have, that they can show that they've had successful clients and that they're able to push people forward. And if they can't show you that, would probably be something I would steer clear of.
Yeah. Okay. So I can talk to you for hours, but I want to make sure I'm intentional here. You've been in business how long?
About 10 years.
10 years. You've learned so much during that time, I'm sure. If you can go talk to your younger self and say, hey, this is what you should be doing now, what would that be?
Yeah, I would have priced my services higher to begin with. I would have actually given myself the mathematical formula that I give clients today. So I have a worksheet that I give people to say, here's where we're going to get your price. And we go from mathematics on that one. Would have started there. I would have told myself to hire sooner than when I thought I was ready. By the time you're ready to hire, it's too late.
What do you mean by that?
So a lot of times we get to the point where we're overwhelmed. We don't have time to read our email. We don't have time to do things. And then it's like, well, I need to hire someone, but I don't have time to train them. I'm so busy that I don't have time to tell them what to do. I don't have time to teach them. They just have to figure it out.
Yeah.
It's going to be a really poor start to a teammate relationship. So even as you're a solopreneur, this sounds crazy to most people. Write your processes and procedures. Take the time to document what you're doing. Yeah. Take the time to even document so far as to how would I respond to an email to an angry customer, and write what the process is. And it feels very strange when people are solo business owners. And
yes.
I'm helping a friend start a business right now, and he's kind of pushed back on some of these things, but he needs to hire. And I said, great. Do you have the processes to teach him when he comes on? And the answer is no. So if you don't start with that, like that was really where my downfall was, is I didn't take the time to slow down and get the foundation that I needed in order to bring on the right team. So then I was flustered when I brought my first assistant on. So like I said, she was kind of all over the place, but looking back, I was probably the reason she was all over the place. It's because I had no clear vision or direction to give her because I was going too fast to know what I was doing. And then probably to invest in myself sooner. There was a lot of times where, I didn't go to a conference, or I didn't, buy a book or something because I was just trying to save money. And again, at that time, everything was like going towards debt. And I think I missed some learning opportunities, or got them later, but could have had them a bit sooner and networked with different people. Because again, sometimes it's those connections at those types of things that are everything.
Yes.
I think the last thing I would have told myself, so I teach like a profit first methodology. So Mike Michalowicz wrote this great book, and he talks about, setting aside money for profit, money for yourself, for your owner's pay, money for taxes, which all belongs to the IRS. My very first year in business, I made a lot of money. It was really exciting. And we, plowed through this debt thing and got our tax bill. And I was like, what? I was like, what do you mean I have to pay? I don't know. It was time. It was like $12,000 or something. And I was like, I don't have $12,000 sitting around. Like, what am I supposed to do? So anyway, started profit first in my business. And now, even when my CPA calls and is like, here's how much we owe, like the money's just there. Like being intentional about setting it aside first. But again, that's that whole price structure, right?
Yeah.
If you're not pricing it properly to pay yourself, also to pay the IRS, like you're not going to be setting yourself up for success. So that price can't be random. It's got to include those things that we're not thinking about and intentional profit on top of it. So those are probably the three like biggest areas for sure. But yeah, that's that first tax bill was a wake up call when you didn't say anything for it. I was like, I was like, I work on people's books and work with money.
Right. You see it all the time.
Day, but no,
it's totally like, this is my tax bill? Oh,
totally blindsided in your own business. Like it's not a thing.
Well, I just want to say that like, I just love how organized you are and just well thought out, that you're always just making everything sound so easy. But I always have to remind myself that like, you've been in this for 10 years, right? And so it's like, if you've just started your business or if you just have been doing this for 3 to 4 years, it's okay, right? And so what's one lesson that you could say that you've learned and that you are currently applying? Because I think it can get a little bit discouraging sometimes. You see someone on social media, you hear someone's story, you're like, I want to be that. I want to get that organized. I want to know how to put all of my money in certain baskets. And some people are like, how do I do that? And so I think it's just all about the mindset, but like, kind of tell me like, how long did it take you to get to this space?
Oh, yeah, it took a while. Like, and there are days where I'm like, I thought we were past, XYZ challenges or whatever.
And then it like comes back up.
Yeah. Like I told you earlier, I think as business grows and you get more, the problems stay the same, but the zeros get bigger. Like there's just more zeros on the problem. Like it's, it's a number of people versus one person as a challenge. It's everything just, they stays the same. It just gets bigger, and your ability to manage it gets better.
Yeah.
Because you've been there, you've got some experience, that kind of thing. Like I think it builds with time, and it does build with experience, and it builds with that network and asking other people and asking people that you think look successful. Like, hey, how do you do it? What is, what's happening? And getting those answers. And it's funny in entrepreneurship, like everyone shares everything. Like in general, like we share our struggles because other people get it. It's not, my husband, he has a 9-to-5 like standard job kind of thing. He gets to turn that off when he comes home. This doesn't turn off. Like I'm always thinking about the business, even if I'm not doing something for it. Like it's just in my wheelhouse. And I think most entrepreneurs are that way. So to find those like people that just get it, that's where, bouncing ideas off of is really helpful. But I think maybe the one like thing of, advice, or the one thing that I'm applying now is that not all business is good business. Being able to turn down clients, being able to have a discovery call with someone and go, this person's not going to be a fit for us. And at the beginning, it was would have been like turning down money. So I took on everybody.
Right. Because you're like, I just got to get going.
At a low price and got overwhelmed. And now, even at much higher prices, I can still tell someone, no, that you're not going to be a fit for our organization. We have a lot of standards. And if my team doesn't like a client, or if the client treats them poorly, I will sunset that relationship in a heartbeat. And we just did with our largest client. I mean, this was a 6-figure-a-year client, and we said goodbye to them because our team hated them and they weren't nice to them. And that's not a fit for us. Right. And I will turn down money in a heartbeat to protect my team or to protect our sanity around anything. And I think just remembering that you don't have to serve everyone. Again, your price might be too high. You might, somebody might say, well, I can't work with you. That's fine.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people they can go work with for other things.
Right.
You need to hold a standard and boundaries in your company to, support your bottom line, support your team, support your sanity. And not everyone's a fit, and that's
so
okay.
Good. That's so good. Which is why I understand now more than ever, having your ideal client in mind is so important. And I think this is another reminder, because I keep hearing the statement that if you're talking to everybody, you're really talking to nobody. And so like you said, if you get reminded that no, this is really our ideal client. And it's we love your price. We love what you can offer, but it's for our peace and sanity, we're going to have to turn this down.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of growth in that too, because I think it's just different parts of the business that you kind of walk through, because in the beginning, you are just in that survival mode. You got to get started. You got to do whatever you need to do to get off the ground. But to get to a space to say hey, we're okay. We like the number, but this is not going to be a good fit for us.
And it's exciting when somebody wants to come work for you. You're oh, this client wants to work with me. It makes that ego boost. Yeah. It feels really good. You're yes, okay. I'm going to close this.
Yeah.
But no, if they're going to take up your time, if they're going to be, nitpicking, if they're going to be sending 100 emails a day, or, just absorbing all of it, you just don't know what you're going to get. But I can tell you, the second that something starts to feel off,
pay attention to that.
And it's kind of like with work, people do, they say, you do a lot. And the second that any of this starts to feel like a job or like work, I know I'm doing it wrong.
Wow.
Because right now, none of it does.
Yeah. That's so good. Okay. As we close out, because like I said, I can talk to you forever. How do you keep that work-life balance? And I guess even to tie into, are you going to be collecting any more businesses?
Yes. We actually are deep in the middle of the next thing.
Ooh, this is exciting.
It's going to be incredible. And I want to talk about it, but I can't.
No, you're okay.
But yes, there's more to come, but it's prioritizing. It's when I wake up, I'm doing my journal and I'm setting my intentions for the day, and I'm getting my, my workout in on the days that I, plan for. And it's knowing what the outcome is and knowing how I want to feel at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's knowing how I want to feel at the end of the week or the end of my life, and knowing what that goal is and focusing so hard on it that I just don't let anything else get in the way. I'm just not going to get derailed. If something doesn't come through correctly, or if, the thing for the mall, it's been delayed, there's probably a reason. Now it just gives us more time to answer different questions, and we just get, it just gives us more of a runway. But it's intentionality and making sure that I know what that outcome looks like, and starting with the end game and making sure that I'm putting the things in place that get there. I'm around people who make me feel good and who support me, and I have conversations, and I put things like this into my day.
Yeah.
It's not just one more thing. It's I've been looking forward to this all week.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. And it's saying no to things that don't make me feel good.
Yeah.
If it's a social outing that I don't want to be there, or if I want to sit at home in my pajamas on a Friday night, that's what I'm going to do. And I really have stopped worrying about what other people think about my life, because they're not the ones living it.
Gosh. I'm so blessed to have you. Your wisdom, hopefully, it not just blessed one person, but millions of people listening today. I appreciate your insights. This is not going to be the last time that people are going to be seeing you. So if they're going to stay connected to you, I'm going to put all your information in the show notes so you guys can stay connected to Tracy and all of her businesses. So check out the description below, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, Danielle.
If you found value in this episode, I'd love to hear your thoughts on your key takeaways. Take a moment, download this episode, and share your feedback by leaving a review for this episode. Better yet, snap a screenshot and share it on your social media. Now, don't forget to tag me so I can personally connect with you. Your insights might just be what someone else needs. Now, let's make an impact together.